Picture this. It's a foggy night in 1978, deep in Manhattan's Hell's Kitchen. A notorious gangster steps out of a bar, laughing with his crew. Suddenly, shots ring out. Bam! Bam! He crumples to the sidewalk. But this isn't just any hit. This is the spark that ignites a brutal war between Irish rebels and Italian kingpins. A conflict that nearly topples the entire New York mob empire and the culprits. A ragtag band of Irish Americans called the Westies, a crew so ruthless they actually made the mafia blink. Buckle up, because this is their true story. It's a tale of loyalty, betrayal, and the dark side of the American dream that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Welcome to the Westies, Shadows of Hell's Kitchen, our factual dive into one of America's most infamous gangs. We're keeping it clean and family-friendly, but get ready for a roller coaster of real history that's as thrilling as any blockbuster. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to uncover how a small crew from a tough Irish neighborhood rose to power, clashed with the big leagues, and ultimately crumbled right before our eyes. Along the way, we'll explore the clever schemes, the unlikely alliances, and the very human drives that fueled it all. So let's start at the beginning. Hell's Kitchen. Pictured in the mid-20th century, it's a slice of Manhattan, just west of Times Square, was a gritty melting pot of immigrants, factories, and dreams that often got deferred. It was named for its scorching summers and its fiery reputation, and it was home to hardworking Irish families who had arrived during the Great Famine waves of the 1800s. But by the 1960s, economic trouble hit hard. Jobs vanished as the shipping docks moved across the river to New Jersey, leaving unemployment and desperation in their wake. In that void, gangs formed as a twisted kind of community. Protection rackets, loan sharking, and street hustles became ways to survive. This is where we meet Mickey Spillane, the gentleman gangster. In the 1950s and 60s, Spillane ran the neighborhood with a velvet glove over an iron fist. He was dapper, he was charming, and he controlled the piers, the unions, and the gambling rackets. Spillane's crew enforced a certain kind of order. But they weren't saints. They dabbled in extortion and muscle work. Yet Spillane kept things relatively civil, focused on Irish pride and avoided a lot of wars. He even hosted community events like block parties to win the hearts of the neighborhood. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. A younger, more ruthless generation of upstarts resented Spillane's old-school ways. Leading the charge was a fiery kid named James Coonan, better known as Jimmy. Born in 1946, right in Hell's Kitchen, Coonan grew up tough. His dad was a boxer, and the streets taught him everything he needed to know about survival. By his teens, he was already running with a wild bunch, pulling off heists and getting into brawls. Coonan dreamed big. He wanted to unite the Irish gangs and challenge the Italian mafia. Absolute dominance over New York crime. But first he needed an ally. That's where Mickey Featherstone comes into the picture. Born in 1947, Featherstone was a Vietnam veteran, haunted by the memories of war. He returned home in 1968, battle-hardened and restless, a man without a mission. Featherstone and Coonan linked up in prison during the early 70s, where they bonded over shared grudges and big ambitions. Featherstone quickly became Coonan's right-hand man, loyal, strategic, and completely unflinching. Together, they plotted to overthrow Mickey Spillane and take Hell's Kitchen for themselves. Their takeover was bold and brutally calculated. 1977, after years of skirmishes and rising tension, Coonan's crew finally struck. Mickey Spillane was gunned down outside his apartment, a shocking move that sent ripples of fear and excitement through the entire underworld. Coonan, just 31 years old, declared himself the new boss. He rebranded his group as the Westies, drawing from the neighborhood's West Side moniker. The name stuck, thanks in large part to cops and reporters who sensationalized their every move. At its peak, the Westies numbered around 20 to 30 core members, with maybe 60 affiliates. They were small compared to the Mafia's hundreds, but their sheer ferocity more than made up for it. So what made the Westies so entertainingly audacious? Their operations were like a high-stakes game of chess mixed with pure street smarts. They completely dominated the rackets in Hell's Kitchen. There was loan sharking, where they'd lend money at sky-high interest rates and collect with terrifying threats. They ran hidden gambling dens in the back rooms of local bars. They shook down construction unions for protection fees. One of their most clever schemes involved the Intrepid Museum, that floating aircraft carrier turned tourist spot on the Hudson River. In the 1980s, the Westies infiltrated the museum staff, skimming ticket sales and creating no-show jobs for their pals. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished right into their pockets, all while unsuspecting families snapped photos of fighter jets. It's completely oblivious to the mob ties running the show. But the Westies weren't just local hustlers. They went pro. They specialized in contract work for the Italian mafia, particularly the powerful Gambino family. Now, why would they do that? Well, the Italians controlled the city, but they needed outsiders to handle the dirty jobs to avoid police heat. The Westies became their go-to enforcers, handling disputes with brutal, undeniable efficiency. In return, the Gambinos offered protection and a cut of bigger pies, like drug distribution. This strange alliance peaked in the late 70s when Jimmy Coonan met with the Gambino boss himself, Paul Castellano, to negotiate peace after a near war over territory. Just picture this tense sit-down. Coonan, the scrappy, unpredictable Irishman, facing off against Castellano, the polished, powerful Italian Don. Over whiskey? Lots of it. They hashed out a deal. The Westies would handle hits for the Gambinos, and in exchange, they'd get complete autonomy in Hell's Kitchen. And it worked, for a while. Here's a wild anecdote for you. In 1980, after a boozy night, Mickey Featherstone and his crew nearly ambushed a Gambino family meeting, almost wiping out key figures. It was only because their whiskey-fueled tempers cooled down just in time that a bloodbath was averted. Bloodbath that could have completely rewritten mob history. The Westies' reputation grew to legendary proportions. Police estimated they were linked to somewhere between 60 and 100 serious incidents between 1968 and 1986, though street rumors inflated that number into the thousands. Their style was incredibly bold. Daytime confrontations on crowded streets, leaving witnesses absolutely stunned. But they were smart, too. They used alibis, had insiders in the unions, and even leveraged their community ties to evade capture for years. People in Hell's Kitchen often stayed silent, either out of fear or out of a strange sense of loyalty. Many saw the Westies as protectors against outsiders, yet cracks began to appear in their foundation. The violence escalated, straining their alliances. Mickey Featherstone, plagued by paranoia stemming from his war days, started questioning everyone's loyalties, even Coonan's. Then, in 1986, disaster struck. Featherstone was framed for a murder he didn't commit by his own crew. Furious and feeling betrayed, he did the unthinkable. He flipped. He became a star witness for the federal government. His testimony unleashed a torrent of secrets that brought the whole organization crashing down. This is where Rudy Giuliani, the U.S. attorney at the time, enters the scene. He famously labeled the Westies the most savage organization in the history of New York City. Using the powerful RICO laws, the racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, the government built a massive case against the gang. In 1987 and 1988, a series of trials completely dismantled the Westies. Jimmy Coonan was sentenced to 75 years for racketeering and multiple other counts. Mickey Featherstone entered the Witness Protection Program, his betrayal sealing the Westies' fate. By 1988, the crew was history, and their territory was quietly absorbed by other criminal groups. The Westies' story began to fade as Hell's Kitchen gentrified in the 90s. Today, it's known as Clinton, a neighborhood of trendy lofts and off-Broadway theaters. But their legacy lingers, immortalized in books like T.J. English's classic, The Westies, Inside New York's Irish Mob, which details the raw ambition and the inevitable fallout. So, as we wrap up, let's reflect on the human side of this. What drives people into worlds like this? Gangs like the Westies often sprout from tough soil, poverty, a lack of opportunities, and a desperate search for belonging. Psychologists talk about social identity theory, the idea that people join groups to gain a sense of power and family when life has dealt them a bad hand. Coonan and Featherstone weren't born villains. War, economic hardship, and the pressures of their neighborhood shaped them into what they became. Loyalty was their code, but it was betrayal fueled by fear and self-preservation that brought it all down. Human behavior shows us we're wired for connection, but in extreme circumstances, that wiring can twist into cycles of violence. Criminologists like Edwin Sutherland had a theory of differential association, which suggests we learn deviance from our peers. The Westies embodied the dark side of the immigrant struggle, Irish Americans fighting for their piece of the pie, but choosing the shadows over the light. Today, programs that tackle youth at risk through education, job opportunities, and community support are working to break these cycles. It's a powerful reminder that behind every gangster tale is a human story of choices, regrets, and the hope for a better path. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the Westies wild ride. If this story hooked you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What is it that draws us to these stories of crime and power? Until next time, stay curious.